Everyone just wants to be the Seattle Seahawks, huh? Trying to take our coordinators. We are going to dive into in this episode of Seahawks Today. I'm your host, Will Ortner. We're going to dive into the latest news surrounding offensive coordinator Klint Kubiak and why he's already being linked to multiple different head coach vacancies, why the teams are rushing to get him interviewed this week. It is important to note kind of what his schedule is, and then why teams would hire Klint Kubiak, and then, of course, why teams wouldn't hire Klint Kubiak. Before we get into any of that, though, I got to make sure that you know about subscribing to the channel. Right now, we are just 75 subscribers away from getting to 79K. Even on my off days, I'm giving you guys Seahawks content, so make sure that you come on in, hit that sub button. The minute that there is news around the Seattle Seahawks, I got you covered. So hit that sub button. All right, so the big news surrounding Klint Kubiak and the Seattle Seahawks today is that Ian Rapoport is reporting that Kubiak is going to interview with the Raiders. It will be later on this week. And he's actually been requested by multiple other teams, and Kubiak will more than likely take those interviews, though it does sound like those interviews will be later on this week, probably around that like Friday or Saturday mark for him, which makes sense, right? The Seahawks schedule, they will be practicing today. They will be practicing tomorrow. And then my understanding of it is the Seahawks are going to let their players head out of town, or at least go back home and get some rest, really buy in to the bye week and rest up our players before they go on, hopefully, what is a final 3-game stretch here. Now, I think this is smart by the Seahawks, but I also think it's smart for Klint Kubiak to go and interview for these head coach openings. I still am in a position where I do believe that Kubiak will be in Seattle in 2026, but it is important to note, and it is important to talk about when it comes to Klint Kubiak and the Seattle Seahawks, that I think he has earned and deserves to go to most of these head coaching opportunities and interview for a job. There are only 32 jobs that are available for the position that Kubiak ultimately wants to aspire to. And I think at the end of the day, it is good for head coach Mike Macdonald to allow Kubiak and Aiden Dirty to go and do their interviews. Why? It shows them that he trusts them. He trusts that they will prepare the way that they need to prepare to put the Seahawks in a position to go out and win a Super Bowl this year. But more importantly, I do think that if Mike Macdonald or the Seattle Seahawks tried to not allow these guys to go and do these head coaching interviews, or, tried to sabotage it on the back end, it would be a reason for these guys to, well, frankly, not want to coach in Seattle anymore. And the idea here is to be a good head coach that builds his own coaching tree, much like we're seeing from Sean McVay. And then when those guys go to the next places, hopefully it works out for them. But if it doesn't, then they can always come back home. I do think that is very important to note. Now, there's a big reason why a lot of these teams are interviewing offensive coordinator Kubiak and defensive coordinator Dirty right now. The reason is the NFL schedule allows them to be interviewed while they are on the bye week for the postseason. You will notice that none of these teams are interviewing Shula, the defensive coordinator down for the Los Angeles Rams. Well, the reason for that is because Shula is not allowed to interview for these jobs. The NFL has a rule that once your team is competing in the postseason, unless you are the team that gets the bye, or in this case, the NFC team that gets the bye, that team can interview. Like the Broncos, if they had coordinators that were eligible for interviews and people wanted to interview them for head coaching jobs, they could go and interview as well. So it's important to note why these teams are going after Kubiak so hard right now. It's because they have such a limited window. Now, why would some of these teams entertain hiring Seahawks offensive coordinator Klint Kubiak? Well, it's important to note that Kubiak is a very hard worker. He is someone who has come in to Seattle and instantly hit the ground running. He came in and he built up his offense the way he wanted it to be run. He's clearly good at making adjustments throughout the year, and he's one of those guys, from all understanding and from what everyone seems to say, is he's a first in, first out type, or first in, last out type of a guy. First in, first out would not necessarily be all that good. Kubiak also is a very calming presence. He's not a guy that's going to get too high in games, and he's not going to get too low in games. What does that mean? It means when things are going your way, You don't have to look over at Coach Kubiak and think, oh man, that guy's going nuts. He's off his rocker. And at the same point, when things are going bad, Kubiak's still going to be there. Hey guys, it's okay. We've got this. Here are the things that we need to fix. That is important to kind of talk about when it comes to Klint Kubiak and to kind of understand why other teams may want him to be their head coach if they want a calming presence. Those types of guys in a football game where it can get really high strung and really high pressure, they can be few and far between to find. They can be very hard to find. And so when you do find a coach like Kubiak that is calm and can be an easygoing personality type of guy, it is important for some teams to go and hold on to those guys, especially because a lot of players like that. The last reason why a lot of teams are interested in Kubiak is because he comes with his own system. He's not a guy like a Dan Campbell where he is only going to be as good as his coordinators. We've seen it in Detroit. The best years for the Lions were when he had Aaron Glenn as his defensive coordinator and he had Ben Johnson as his offensive coordinator. Why? Because they're both really good coordinators. So much so that they got their own head coaching jobs. Now, there's some debate about how good Glenn is, but I don't think there's any debate on how good Ben Johnson is. Now, Campbell is going through. He hired an OC that didn't work out this year. They moved on from him. They're going to look to find another OC and see if they can be better. That's not something that you have to worry about with Kubiak. Kubiak can just show up and ball out. That'll be important to note. I do want to ask you, will an NFL team hire Klint Kubiak to be their head coach? You look in your crystal ball. Let me know down below in the comment section, yes or no, if Kubiak will be a head coach in 2026. Now, I do want to let you know why there are some reasons why teams might not hire Klint Kubiak, but before I do, I need to let you know that I got a couple of vacations planned this summer, and thankfully, I need to start saving money right now with the help of my good friend and the sponsor of today's video, Rocket Money. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. Rocket Money has been helping me track my subscriptions, and we found that I was actually double paying for a couple of different streaming services. So what Rocket Money helped me do, find those extra bills that I was paying that I didn't need to pay. They helped me cancel those extra subscriptions, and now I am saving a little bit of extra money. That money, I'm setting it aside because Rocket Money is helping me budget. I have a big trip where I'm going to go back home in July. I'm very excited to see my family, but I want to have some money left over so I can go and have a burger over at a couple of different places, right? Or I can go get food where I want to. Rocket Money is helping me create a budget for that trip, and they're also helping me set some spending goals. What does that mean? It means I can save a little extra money on the side each month in preparation for those trips, so I'm not just living really, really tight as we get close to that July trip. Thank you so much, Rocket Money. Let Rocket Money help you reach your financial goals faster. Join at rocketmoney.com/SeahawksChat. That's rocketmoney.com/SeahawksChat. rocketmoney.com/SeahawksChat. Shout out to Rocket Money. Really appreciate them. Now, back to head coach or potential head coach Klint Kubiak. Why might teams not want to hire our offensive coordinator here in Seattle? Well, frankly, as good of a deal it is that he is a calming presence, there's also this belief that if you are going to be a head coach in the National Football League, you have to be a leader of men. And it is kind of thought about with Kubiak that he's not a leader of men. Kubiak is not going to come into a room and strike fear into his players. He's also not the type of guy that's going to come into his room and say, hey, players, you need to jump. And they go, how high? They'll go, do I need to jump? Right? When head coach Mike Macdonald walks into a room and he says something, everybody in that room listens, from the players all the way down to the front office. Will that be the same for Kubiak? It's kind of believed that he's not going to. It's kind of a lukewarm milk toast type of personality from what we've all heard. So that means when he goes into interviews, he's not going to blow anyone out of the water. No one's going to look at Klint Kubiak and say, wow, I want to go out and die for that man. Now, some might say the calming presence is a virtue and it's a good thing. Others, they might say that it's not so good of a thing, and that's a reason why teams may not hire him. Another reason why teams might not hire offensive coordinator Klint Kubiak is because he hasn't been the offensive coordinator for a team for multiple years. Every other job before this one, the head coach got removed before the end of that season, or they got removed at the end of that season. So Klint Kubiak, actually, if he were to return to Seattle, it would be the first time that he was an offensive coordinator for the same team for multiple years. That is important to note. Is he a one-trick pony? Now, he's had success at all of these places, or differing versions of success, the most obviously being here in Seattle. But is that going to be enough for teams to go, hey, we think that he can be a head coach, and not just for 2 or 3 years. We think he can be the head coach to build the next dynasty in Las Vegas or in Arizona or wherever he is interviewing, right? I believe New York's another team that asked for him. So will that be a down piece for Kubiak? The fact that he hasn't shown that he can do it for multiple years because, well, frankly, he hasn't had the opportunity. Now, I don't think that's necessarily super fair to Klint Kubiak, but it is something that is going to be a knock against him. And now the last thing that's going to come up, and it's something that I see a lot in my DMs, it's something that I see a lot in the comment section here on Seahawks Today. Klint Kubiak has a lot of what I call, what the hell are you doing plays. Case in point, first and goal from the 1 yard line, the Seahawks ran the ball down the 49ers' throat all the way to get to that 1 yard line, and he decides to do a play action pass. Another play call that I'd love to bring up, Seahawks are marching against the 49ers. Now we're going to call a weird Jalen Milroe play that results in a fumble and goes nowhere for the Seahawks. So this has happened multiple times where Kubiak has some, we'll call it iffy play calling. I think that there are going to be multiple teams that look at the play calling of Klint Kubiak and say, it's good 85% of the time. But what the hell is happening that 15? And how much of a hand does Mike Macdonald have in those play calls? Is he telling Klint Kubiak, hey man, we're not doing that here? And now that Klint Kubiak could potentially become a head coach, would there be someone there to check him? If there is not, what could happen? Are we going to have all kinds of trick plays that just don't make any sense? These are the things that could potentially keep Klint Kubiak from being a head coach in the next head coaching cycle. Now, I already kind of gave you my take on it, that I think he will be back in Seattle, but my reasoning for that is because I think the Seahawks are going to go on a deep run. And if the Seahawks go all the way to the Super Bowl, do you think that any of the teams that have a head coach vacancy right now are going to sit on their hands and wait for Klint Kubiak? I don't know that there is a team that's going to be that patient. Head coach Mike Macdonald blew the Seahawks out of the water so much so that they waited for him when he was with the Baltimore Ravens. Are these teams that are looking for a head coach right now going to be able to do that? I frankly don't think so. The other big reason why I don't think he'll be a head coach is there are bigger head coaching, let's say, potential candidates that are out on the market right now. Kevin Stefanski is a 2-time coach of the year, head coach of the year. I don't know what Cleveland was doing getting rid of him, frankly. And then the other big one that you need to talk about, the elephant in the room, John Harbaugh's out there. He had 18 successful seasons in Baltimore. Oh, and by the way, he won a Super Bowl. He will be a head coach next year if he wants to be, and from what it sounds like, he frickin' wants to be. So I do think that there are some better candidates that are out there right now that could end up blocking Kubiak from being a head coaching candidate and getting hired as a head coach, simply just because, well, they've been there and they've done that. They're the safer hire. So I do believe that Kubiak will be the offensive coordinator in Seattle next year. But I'll tell you right now, anytime there's news around him, I'm going to continue to report on it. Does being a leader of men matter with a head coach? I think that it does. I think being a leader of men does matter because there are a lot of alpha personalities in that room. And the head coach, he doesn't have to be the most alpha, but he has to be pretty darn high up on that list. Do you agree with me or disagree with me? Let me know down below in the comment section. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to the show today. Had a lot of fun. Like I said, doing a lot of at-homes recently, so I appreciate everyone who tunes in. Hopefully you get the same information, maybe not with as cool of graphics, but you're going to get informed just the same as you would on a normal show. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Make sure that you hit that sub button. Of course, we will be live to hate watch the 49ers on Sunday. So make sure that you hit that sub button so you're alerted when we go live. Come in and hang out with us. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and I can't wait to see you guys next time.